Shadows twist where whispers grow. The edge of light begins to flow. A world unseen through fractured glass, where futures meet the echoes past. Step closer now, the veil is thin. A riddle starts where dreams begin. The experimental medium calls your name. Nothing here will be the same.
Welcome to the Experimental Medium Podcast. Today, we're looking at some really specific historical guides, texts from the late 19th and early 20th centuries. It was a time when people were trying to seriously document how to develop mediumship. We've got works like E.W. Wallace's A Guide to Mediumship and Psychical Unfoldment, stuff from Allan Kardec, his Practical Instruction, and the Book of Mediums, and also W.H. Back's Mediumship and Its Development.
Yeah, these are fascinating because they're not just philosophical. They were meant as actual instruction manuals, like how-to guides from over a century ago.
Exactly. And that's our focus today. What do these specific books tell us about how they thought you should develop mediumistic abilities? We're looking strictly at the conditions they set out, the phenomena they described, and crucially, the step-by-step techniques they recommended.
Right. It's about understanding their methods, their framework, purely based on what's in these texts. Not about whether it works by today's standards, but what they taught.
It's like opening up a time capsule on psychic development instruction.
Pretty much. They were trying to systematize it.
Okay, so let's kick things off with the basics they laid down. Before even trying anything specific, what did Wallace, Kardec, Bach say was essential? What were the must-have conditions?
Well, across the board, the environment and your own state of mind were huge. Wallace really hammers home the need for a quiet atmosphere.
Just like turn off the radio quiet or something more.
More, I think. It wasn't just about noise. It was creating a calm, sort of sacred space,
Yeah.
Minimizing all distractions so you could potentially notice subtle things.
Okay, a peaceful vibe.
Exactly. And Kardec adds to that, stressing you needed a serious, sincere attitude. This wasn't a game or just for kicks. Respect for the whole process was key.
Makes sense. If you're trying to tune into something delicate, you wouldn't treat it like a party trick. What about practice? Was it like learning an instrument?
Oh, absolutely fundamental. Perseverance, regular practice that's mentioned everywhere. They didn't see mediumship as something you just suddenly get.
Yeah.
Wallace uses this great term, unfoldment. It suggests it's already inside you, like a potential, and needs time and care to, well, unfold, like a flower bud.
Unfoldment. I
Oh.
like that. It feels different from just learning or receiving something.
It really does. It implies it's an inherent capacity. So development is about creating the right conditions and patiently letting it emerge. Mental readiness, being receptive, having a passive attitude, those are also vital conditions. You had to be willing to just receive without trying to force it.
And what about doing it alone versus with others? We hear about sitting in circle from that era.
Yeah, sitting in circle definitely comes up in the sources. It was often recommended, especially for physical phenomena, where the idea was that the group's combined energy could help things happen.
Like a collective battery.
Sort of, yeah.
Yeah.
But they didn't only talk about groups. Wallace and Kardec also give guidance for practicing alone, particularly for developing things like clairvoyance or automatic writing, the more mental stuff. So both were seen as valid ways to develop depending on what you were aiming for.
Okay, so the groundwork is quiet space, serious attitude, patience, regular practice, being receptive, letting it unfold, sometimes alone, sometimes in a group.
Got it. So with those conditions met, what were people actually trying to develop? What kinds of phenomena do these old guides describe?
They lay out quite a spectrum, often splitting it into physical and mental types. The physical stuff was often, well, more obvious back then.
This means moving, you mean? Spooky action at a distance.
Exactly that. Raps and knocks on walls or tables, tables tilting, or even lifting off the ground, levitation objects moving on their own. Sometimes even materializations, though those were described as rarer or needing more advanced conditions.
Wow.
These physical effects were often seen as maybe the initial signs, sometimes linked to the mediums or the group's energy sort of acting externally.
And then the mental side, the internal experiences.
Yes, and these were arguably just as important, if not more so, in the guides. Things like automatic writing or drawing, where your hand moves seemingly on its own.
Guided by something else. That was the idea, yes. Guided by an external intelligence, they believed. Then there's trance speaking, where the medium goes into an altered state and speaks, but the voice or message isn't considered their own.
And the clairabilities. Seeing and hearing things.
Right. Clairvoyance, seeing spirits, symbols, maybe future scenes in the mind's eye. Clairaudience, hearing voices or sounds that aren't physically there. And sometimes clairsentience, feeling presences or emotions.
Hardek's Book of Mediums really gets into the details here, doesn't it?
Oh, massively. He creates this very detailed classification system, trying to categorize all these different types and even explain the mechanisms based on his spiritist framework, involving fluids and spirit interaction. Wallace also carefully describes these different psychical powers.
So it wasn't just one thing. It was a whole range of potential experiences they were cataloging. Okay, this brings us to the core, the actual how-to. If you followed the conditions, you knew the possibilities. What were the specific step-by-step instructions these guides gave to actually start this unfoldment?
This is where it gets really practical. The most basic technique, mentioned by both Wallace and Kardec, is simply called sitting for development.
Okay, walk us through that. According to these texts, what did sitting for development involve, step by step?
Right. So, step 1, set aside a regular time, daily or weekly, same time ideally, maybe 20-30 minutes to start. Step 2, find your quiet space. Sit comfortably, but upright, not so comfy. You doze off. Wallace suggests maybe hands resting lightly on a table or your lap.
Okay.
Step 3, and this is key, cultivate passive receptivity. You consciously try to quiet your own thoughts, worries, expectations. You don't try to see or hear anything. You just wait. You listen inwardly and outwardly, just being open.
This is like actively trying not to try. That sounds subtle.
It is. It's about consciously relaxing your own will, making space for impressions that don't feel like your normal thoughts. And patience is crucial here. They say the first few sittings, maybe nothing happens that you notice, but sticking with it regularly is what allows the unfoldment.
Okay, that's the general sitting. What about something specific, like trying automatic writing? How did they instruct you to begin that, step by step?
All right, for automatic writing or drawing, you do the same sitting preparation, quiet, receptive state. But then, step 4, you take a pen or pencil, hold it really loosely in your hand, just resting it on a piece of paper.
Loosely, okay.
Very loosely. The instruction is explicit. Don't think about what to write. Keep your mind as blank and passive as you can manage. Step 5, just wait. Wait for your hand to feel an impulse to move or for it to actually start moving on its own.
So you're letting it happen, not making it happen.
Exactly. You're trying to yield control of the hand, whether they thought it was a spirit, your subconscious, whatever the technique was about allowing that other influence. They often mention that early attempts might just be scribbles, random lines, maybe jerky movements. But with continued practice, this could, they suggested, evolve into letters, words, maybe even coherent messages or drawings. The core steps were that passive waiting with the tool ready.
Interesting. Were there similar step-by-step approaches for clairvoyance or clairaudience?
Similar in principle, but without the physical tool. For clairvoyance, the steps would be sit quietly, often eyes closed or softly focused. Then pay attention non-judgmentally to any images, colors, lights, or little scenes that pop into your mind's eye or seem to appear in your field of vision.
Just noticing what arises.
Yes. And for clairaudience, same quiet sitting, but focusing your attention inwardly, listening for any subtle sounds, snippets of voice, music, anything that isn't coming through your physical ears. The big challenge they noted for these was distinguishing genuine impressions from just your own imagination. That took practice and, importantly, discernment later on. And it's worth mentioning, Bach's text throws in the idea that mesmerism hypnosis basically could potentially help induce that receptive state needed for development. Just reporting what the source says there reflects the experimental vibe of the time.
Okay, so summing up the practical steps from these guides, it starts with regular, quiet sitting, getting into that passive receptive state. Then for specific things, holding a pen loosely and waiting for movement for automatic writing, or focusing inward and noticing sights or sounds for the clairabilities, all framed as this slow, patient unfoldment.
That's the core of the practical advice, yes.
Now, it sounds very methodical, but surely there were warnings, too, things to watch out for. It couldn't have all been easy.
Oh, absolutely not. These guides are full of cautions. A huge one we touched on was attitude. They strongly warned against being insincere, doing it for laughs, or seeking fame or drama. That was seen as attracting the wrong kind of attention, spiritually speaking, or just blocking real progress.
So no trying to get rich or famous from it.
Definitely not the recommended motivation. A serious, almost reverent approach was stressed. Impatience was another big red flag they raised. Trying to force things, getting mad if results didn't come quickly, demanding specific spirits or phenomena, all seen as counterproductive to that natural unfoldment. And maybe the most crucial caution, especially hammered home by Kardec, was about discernment.
Discernment? You mean figuring out what was real?
Not just real versus imagined, but figuring out the nature and reliability of whatever communication or influence was coming through, even if it seemed genuinely mediumistic. Kardec spends ages on this.
So getting a message wasn't enough. You had to vet the messenger.
Precisely. He argued that not all spirits, assuming that's the source, are wise or truthful or good, just like people. So he gave step-by-step criteria for evaluation. Look at the language. Is it logical? Elevated. Consistent over time. Look at the moral tone. Is it uplifting or dodgy? Does the message fit the supposed character of the spirit? He warned fiercely against spirits who flatter, give nonsense answers, contradict themselves, or encourage bad behavior.
Wow, okay. So there's a real critical thinking element built in.
Huge. Failing to discern properly, according to Kardec, could lead you down the garden path, self-deception, obsession by negative influences, spreading harmful ideas. It adds a layer of real responsibility.
Right, it's not just passive receiving then, it's active engagement and judgment.
Very much so, in Kardec's system at least. Reason and morality were key tools for navigating the potential pitfalls.
So looking back at all this detail from Wallace, Kardec, Bach, why should someone listening now care about these century-old instructions? What's a takeaway?
Well, for starters, it gives you the historical roots. A lot of practices you might encounter today didn't just appear, they evolved from frameworks like these. Understanding the original step-by-step methods and the thinking behind them gives you context.
Seeing where it came from.
Exactly. And it offers a different historical lens on consciousness, intuition, maybe even spiritual practice. These authors had a particular model, latent abilities, potential spirit interaction, and their techniques were tailor-made for that model. Exploring their methods, the passive sitting, the automatic writing steps, helps you understand how people in another era systematically tried to explore these still mysterious parts of human experience.
So it's kind of an intellectual exploration of a historical approach to the mind.
You could say that. By looking at the conditions they set, the precise techniques like holding the pen just so, or listening inwardly, you get a really concrete feel for the discipline they believed was involved in psychic development back then. It's a specific historical map for exploring inner landscapes.
Okay, so wrapping up our look at these specific guides by Wallace, Kardec, and Bach. The conditions they laid out were crucial. Quiet, sincerity, patience, receptivity, regular practice that's sitting for development. The phenomena ranged from physical things like raps and movements to mental ones like automatic writing, trance, clairvoyance, clairaudience. And the step-by-step techniques focused on cultivating passivity, whether waiting with a pen or attending to inner senses, all seen as part of that gradual unfoldment. And importantly, strong warnings about impatience and the absolute need for critical discernment, especially regarding any communications received.
That really captures the essence of the practical instructions found in these specific historical texts.
And maybe a final thought to leave you with, drawn from these sources. That idea of unfoldment. The notion, present over a century ago, that developing these kinds of abilities isn't about acquiring something totally new, but more about uncovering or allowing something already inherent within us to emerge. What does that perspective for these old guides suggest about how we might think about human potential or consciousness, both then and maybe even now? Something to think about.
Whispers creeping through the haze, shadows dance in twisted ways, echoes hum from worlds unseen. This is where the strange convene. Step into the unknown mind, secrets hidden, twist and bind, truths that linger in between. Welcome to the spectral stream, a voice that stirs the silent night, guides you through the fading light, journeys deep beyond the real, where unseen forces electric sparks and haunted tones. Reality's edge becomes your home. Questions rise like fragile smoke. The uncharted